Some of the biggest moments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe aren't about battles, villains, or post-credit scenes. They're hiding in plain sight, woven into casting choices so subtle that most fans never question them. You've watched these movies dozens of times. You know the characters by heart, yet there's something you almost definitely missed. These are the MCU actors who played multiple characters, and you definitely missed these. Nathan Fillion has quietly played more MCU characters than almost anyone else. Nathan Fillion first appeared as a hulking blue inmate in The Kiln, briefly threatening Peter Quill before being taken down by Groot. Later, Fillion showed up on screen again as Master Karja, a security officer working for OrgoCorp. He was also cast as Simon Williams, an in-universe actor and superhero, though that role was cut before release. Most recently, Fillion returned in a completely different corner of Marvel by voicing Headpool, a zombified Deadpool variant. Across films and voice roles, Fillion has stacked 4 separate MCU characters. Chris Hemsworth secretly played more than just Thor in the MCU, and he did it right next to Taika Waititi. During Thor's time as a gladiator on Sakaar, one of the enslaved fighters is a massive 3-headed warrior named Hajo. Each head belongs to a different person. The center face is stuntman Shane Rangi, while the 2 side faces are Hemsworth and Waititi themselves. The character is later freed and joins the Revengers during the battle for Asgard. The cameo is brief, and Hajo dies shortly after, but it gives Hemsworth a second MCU role hiding in plain sight. Robert Downey Jr. is returning to the MCU, but not as Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. originally launched the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Tony Stark, appearing across Iron Man films and leading the Avengers through the franchise's first major saga. After his story concluded in Avengers: Endgame, Downey stepped away from Marvel projects. He is now set to return in a completely different role as Doctor Doom, one of Marvel's most iconic villains. Downey will portray Doom in Avengers, Doomsday, and Avengers: Secret War, marking one of the most dramatic multi-role castings in MCU history. Chris Evans technically holds one of the strangest multi-role records in the MCU. Chris Evans is best known as Steve Rogers, appearing across Captain America films, multiple Avengers movies, and even a Spider-Man crossover. But that isn't his only Marvel identity. Evans also briefly appears as Loki while disguised as Captain America, mimicking Loki's mannerisms during a transformation meant to taunt Thor. On top of that, Evans returned to Marvel as Johnny Storm, reprising his Human Torch role when the character appears and is mistaken for Captain America, before revealing himself. One actor, 3 distinct Marvel personas. Benedict Cumberbatch didn't just face the main villain in Doctor Strange, he became him. Benedict Cumberbatch played both the Sorcerer Supreme and Dormammu, the film's cosmic antagonist. Instead of casting a separate performer, Cumberbatch provided the voice and facial capture for Dormammu, with the character's animation designed as a distorted reflection of Strange himself. The result is a villain that subtly mirrors the hero during their final confrontation. This wasn't a one-time occurrence either, as Cumberbatch later portrayed another version of Strange as his own enemy in a separate story, giving him multiple opposing roles within the MCU. Clancy Brown met his end in the MCU, then came back to destroy an entire realm. Clancy Brown first appeared as the Blacksmith, a corrupt former Marine who became a powerful drug kingpin in the Marvel television universe. His story ended when Frank Castle executed him after uncovering the truth behind his family's murder. Brown later returned to the MCU in a completely different role by voicing Surtur, the fire demon of Muspelheim. Summoned during the final moments of Thor, Ragnarok, Surtur fulfills his prophecy by defeating Hela and causing the destruction of Asgard, marking Brown's second major MCU character. Linda Cardellini has played 2 very different lives inside the MCU. Linda Cardellini first appeared as Laura Barton, the wife of Clint Barton, grounding the Avengers story with his family life across multiple films and the Hawkeye series. After that chapter, Cardellini returned to Marvel in a completely different form. She voiced Lila, the anthropomorphic otter finally brought on screen in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Lila had been referenced long before appearing, making Cardellini's return a quiet but meaningful addition. From a farmhouse in hiding to deep space, Cardellini holds 2 distinct MCU roles. Mahershala Ali has already left a major mark on the MCU, and he's doing it again as a completely different character. Mahershala Ali first appeared in the Marvel Universe as Cornell Cottonmouth Stokes, a powerful crime lord in Luke Cage, whose story ended partway through the first season. Years later, Ali was announced as Blade, the iconic vampire hunter set to headline his own Marvel Studios film. The casting instantly stood out because Ali had already played one of the most memorable villains from Marvel's Netflix era, giving him two high-profile MCU identities. Michelle Yeoh entered the MCU in a way almost no one saw coming, twice as two completely different characters. Yeoh first appeared as Aleida Ogord, a member of the Ravagers alongside figures like Starhawk and Mainframe. That character carries deep comic book ties as part of the original Guardians, and even a former Avenger. Later, Yeoh showed up in a completely different corner of the Marvel Universe as Ying-Nan, Shang-Chi's aunt and a Guardian of Ta Lo. This role placed Yeoh at the center of the story, leading the charge in the final battle and guiding Shang-Chi toward his ancestry. Judy Greer quietly switched corners of the MCU without ever appearing on screen twice. Judy Greer first entered the Marvel Universe as Maggie Lang, Scott Lang's ex-wife, appearing in Ant-Man and later returning in Ant-Man and the Wasp. The character simply didn't appear in the third Ant-Man film. Years later, Greer rejoined the MCU in a completely different way by voicing War Pig, a guard working for the High Evolutionary in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The character was created specifically for the film and meets a quick end, giving Greer two very different MCU roles. Seth Green didn't just sneak into the MCU once, he showed up as himself, and as a talking duck. Seth Green first appeared as a Stark Expo attendee in Iron Man 2, sharing a brief cameo alongside his wife. Later, Green returned in a completely different form by voicing Howard the Duck. The character appears throughout the Guardians of the Galaxy films and even shows up during the massive final battle in Avengers Endgame. Green also continued the role in the animated series What If, quietly giving him one of the strangest double roles in the Marvel Universe. Laura Haddock slipped into the MCU twice before most people even noticed. Laura Haddock first appeared as a Captain America fangirl, credited simply as an autograph seeker during Steve Rogers' wartime rise. Years later, Haddock returned in a far more emotional role as Meredith Quill, the mother of Peter Quill. That character became central to the Guardians' story, especially as Peter learned more about his past through his father, Ego. Meredith appears repeatedly in flashbacks, sharing key moments that shape Star-Lord's journey. What started as a background cameo quietly turned into one of the MCU's most personal character connections. Patton Oswalt quietly racked up one of the highest character counts in the MCU. Patton Oswalt joined the Marvel Universe through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where he didn't just play one character, but five. Oswalt portrayed the Koenig brothers, Billy, Ernest Hazard, Sam, Thurston, and Eric, all appearing throughout the series. That alone put him on the MCU multi-role list. But he didn't stop there. Oswalt later returned to the MCU in a completely different corner, this time as the voice of Pip the Troll in a mid-credits scene, adding yet another distinct Marvel character to his resume. Gemma Chan didn't just get a second chance in the MCU, she was brought back in a much bigger way. Gemma Chan first appeared as Minerva, a skilled Star Force sniper working under Jan Rog. That character's story ended when she was shot down during the events of Captain Marvel. Instead of moving on, Marvel cast Chan again in a completely different role. She returned as Cersei, a member of the Eternals with the power to manipulate matter. This time, Chan became central to the story, ending the film as the new leader of the team. Martin Starr quietly entered the MCU twice under two very different identities. Martin Starr first appeared in The Incredible Hulk as a scientist who crosses paths with Bruce Banner while he searches for a cure. That character was later identified in an official novelization as Amadeus Cho. Years later, Starr returned to Marvel in a completely different role as Mr. Harrington, the science teacher seen throughout the Spider-Man films. The two parts were cast separately, and Starr played them as entirely different people. Even though the characters were later linked by Marvel leadership, Starr's performances were created with no connection in mind. Kenneth Choi pulled off one of the earliest double roles in the MCU, and Marvel planned for it. Choi first appeared as Private Jim Morita, a member of the Howling Commandos who fought alongside Steve Rogers against Hydra. That character's story ended before Captain America reached the modern era. Later, Choi returned as Principal Morita, the high school principal who constantly lectures Peter Parker. A photo displayed in the principal's office shows Choi as his original Captain America character. The image was intentionally placed to connect the two roles, subtly suggesting a family link between them. Alfre Woodard appeared in the MCU twice, once as a grieving mother and once as a powerful crime boss. Alfre Woodard first showed up as Miriam Sharp, a woman whose son was killed during the Battle of Sokovia, placing her at the emotional center of the fallout seen in Captain America: Civil War. That same year, Woodard took on a much larger role as Mariah Dillard in Luke Cage. As Black Mariah, she rose as a major antagonist before her story ended when she was poisoned by her daughter, Tilda Johnson. Both roles were based on existing Marvel characters, making her double casting especially notable. Peter Mensah quietly returned to the MCU as a completely different character years after his first appearance. Peter Mensah originally showed up as General Joe Greller, one of Thaddeus Ross's military allies during the events of The Incredible Hulk. That role came and went with little fanfare. Later, Mensah re-entered the Marvel Universe in a very different form, as Kovas, a Remarath who appears across multiple episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Unlike Greller, Kovas played a recurring role within the storyline before ultimately meeting his end, giving Mensah two separate identities in the MCU. Stan Lee didn't just appear in the MCU once, he appeared as almost everyone. Stan Lee showed up from the very beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, starting with a cameo where Tony Stark mistakes him for Hugh Hefner. From there, Lee appeared in every MCU movie through Avengers, Endgame, all filmed before his passing. His roles constantly changed, ranging from delivery men and astronauts to background characters and even versions of himself. Lee also appeared across multiple MCU television series, making him the most frequently appearing actor in Marvel films, with a long-running tradition of cameos woven into the entire universe. Did you know Josh Brolin wasn't the first actor to play Thanos in the MCU? In the Avengers mid-credits scene, that iconic sinister grin actually belonged to Damien Poitier. At the time, Poitier didn't even realize he'd been cast as the Mad Titan. He thought he was playing Super Skrull, thanks to early production rumors. Marvel later brought in Brolin to fully embody Thanos starting with Guardians of the Galaxy, but Poitier still made another MCU appearance. He popped up again in Captain America: Civil War as one of Crossbone's henchmen before being taken down by Black Widow. A surprising Marvel fun fact most fans completely missed: